Safety Zoners, and we are back for another STEM ditty. Now, as we've said before, if the month has an M in it, we look at the M in STEM. We're going to copyright that later. Okay, so there's measuring, there's maths, and we're continuing looking at money. Now, today we're going to look at the really exciting subject of tax. Now, before you all run off, come back. I know it's incredibly boring, but it's really important to get your head around some of the basics of tax and what it's about, what it means. So when you're a little bit older, when you hit 16 and you can start working and you earn a little bit about money, what's going to go on with your money. So I've made some simple slides that we're going to talk through and then we can take it away from there. So back in a second. As promised, I know you're super excited. Here is what we're going to talk about. Tax. Now, how it's calculated, what someone pays if they earn money is in bands. So band 1, 2, 3, 4. But this is for England and Wales. We'll come back to Scotland in 2 seconds. So the idea is, if you earn an amount, say this amount here, you pay that. If you earn between that and that, you pay that. Or is it? We will come back to that in a second. So that's how it looks in England and Wales. Now, it's not just the sausages which are a different shape up here. No siree, Bob. In Scotland, we do things slightly differently as there is more bands. Now, there's a common misconception, so misunderstanding, that if you earn, say, 43 to 150, you pay 41% on tax. And likewise, 12,500 to 14,500, you'll pay 19. That is incorrect. But Andy, I hear you say, you've wrote it down in paper. You've used a green pen. It must be true. Well, I'm going to explain. You see, we're going to use the example of the tax band in Scotland of 25,158. According to the banding, that means you pay 20% tax, right? No. And here's why. Number one, yay, the first 12,500 you earn is tax free. So you don't pay any tax on that. Going back to that 25,158. So the first 12.5 is tax free. The remaining part is 12,600. That's taxed at 20%. So to work out what you'll pay if you earn 25,658 living in Scotland, we work out a percentage of that, 1%, we times it by 20, so all you'll pay per year in tax is 2,000, not 20% of 25,000 as you may have thought. Okay. Now, all tax is paid to the UK government, and that generated 821 billion in the year 2019, 2018, 2019, but we'll come to that at the end. This is what it looks like. That's a whole lot of zeros, nearly as much as what Craig spends on colourful shirts per year. So of that 820 billion, how is it all spent? Now, unfortunately due to printing error, I'm not able to print this out, but I have got my pens. So we're going to go through things one by one because there is a lot of myths about where our tax goes. Number one, the two highest amounts. So if you think of this as a pie, 19% of the 821 billion we spend on healthcare. Okay, so every Thursday we're outside clapping on the NHS. Okay, they're doing an amazing job. Long may that continue. They have 19% of what's generated to keep them going. Okay, next rate is 19% goes on pensions. Okay, that's some money that's put aside. The government match your contributions. So when you come to retirement age, which at the time of writing, time recording is 67, sorry. They contribute to that. So when you're a little bit older and you're no longer working, you will get a pension amount. Okay? So that's the two biggest ones and 19%. So straight off the bat of that 821, we've got a big chunk of that money gone straight away. The next one is 15%, and that goes on welfare. Obviously, you'll be aware in Britain we have a fantastic welfare state where we look after people who are maybe between jobs and not feeling particularly well or unable to work and other issues regarding that. 15% of what we generate in tax goes in keeping that running. Okay? Now, the next one is quite confusing. I had to do some research. It's other, and that's 14%. What does other mean? I hear you cry. Okay, well, before you all get angry and send me an email, other, I've worked out, means culture, football, and overseas aid. Now, obviously, we're a very charitable country and we help countries who are less fortunate than ourselves, but that isn't all the 14%. We help with sports, culture endeavours, obviously, museums and art galleries, they can be free. So a big proportion of that is keeping that part of the thing going on. Now, this may come as a bit of a shock to you. All that, the next one is education. So obviously your schools and the budget assigned to that is less than what we offer towards other. Now, we're not being political. We're just stating the fact that until the age of 16, you're required to go to school, and 11% of the budget generated from taxation goes to this. Okay? So that 5 big pillars of our tax has covered a massive proportion, well over 75% of the taxation money. The next up is defence. Now, it is recommended by, I think, United Nations that of what a country generates, a minimum of 6% of the tax is spent in keeping our armed forces properly funded. So that's, tanks, it's paying soldiers' salaries, warships, keeping planes in the skies, all that kind of relief work that we do. Okay. Now, in doing my research, the next one I found is 6%. So 6% of this number once a year goes on interest. Now, I had to do some research for this. And what that meant is every year the UK government has to pay 41 billion. So pretty much that's 821. We have to pay 41 billion because the amount of money we spend is more than the amount of money we've got coming in. So the British government borrow this money, and there is a cost to borrowing that money and the cost of that per year. Again, we are just stating facts. We are not offering any political opinion. So that puts us all the way up here. And the tiny few minutes left on this clock pie thing is protection. So we've got MOD. So you're probably thinking, what does protection mean? Obviously, a lot of threats. We don't have wars in the same way as we did. So that's keeping up some of our securities, borders and internet firewalls on municipal services. So that takes us all the way up to there. Now we've only got a couple of percentages left. 4% is spent on transport. So a lot of the buses are private companies, but we obviously have to pay them for the services they do. There's a very expensive train line that's going to be running through England. Hopefully it's going to connect up to Scotland, and from that budget we'll go from there, although they've probably had to borrow a little bit more because 4% is only a tiny amount. And the last and smallest part is 2% of what we generate from tax goes on government. So obviously them pens, paper, staff, MPs' wages, their assistants, that money has to be spent somewhere. So when you work and you pay tax of your tax, that's how it go, which is correct at the time of recording, which is the financial year of 2020 and 2021. Now, you're probably thinking, that sounds really, really odd, 2020, 2021. That's because in tax years, or financial I should say, we don't go off calendars. So it's not January the 1st to December like in a calendar. The first day of a financial year is April the 1st and the last day is March the 31st. So basically when you work between these 2 days, the amount of tax that you will generate, which is a bit towards that, will then be, when it's finally calculated, split up and worked out and paid to cover all these things. Now, I appreciate this video is not being particularly interactive, so what you could do, if you want, you could get a pen and paper out, and you could think, what's important to you? Okay, so you've got £821 billion to play with. Okay, you've got to take care of the healthcare, pensions, welfare, cultural things, sports, overseas days, and and culture, education, defence, repaying the loans, protection, transport, and government. How would you spend your money? Maybe have a play with that, obviously, and see what's important to yourself. So there we have it, a breakdown of about an 8-minute long video explaining how tax works, dispelling some of the myths that everything you earn is all taxed, where your money goes, how much this generates, and how it's all sort of divvied up and between what period of time. So we'll conclude the video today. I know tax can be a little bit dull, but it's important that we start addressing issues regarding money and insurance and debt and taxation from an early age, so people can understand exactly what happens to your money. And do you know what? If you don't like what happens to your money, then when you're 18, you have the ability to vote and you can have a say on it from there. Okay, so there we go. We're going to conclude the video today. Stay indoors, wash your hands, stay safe. Peace.